Hey, if I haven't had a chance to meet you, my name is Jacob. I have the privilege of being the pastor here. If I haven't met you, if you would stick around in this lobby area after, the whole staff, Michael, Greg, and I, we kind of circulate around. We try to get to everybody. We know we don't every Sunday, but if you want to chat with us, please stick around and do that. Again, Michael said we're going to have some special announcements about Circle. That's an important part of what we do here, but I'm going to jump right in. We're in this series titled Anthem of Hope. And last week was our first sermon in the series, and we looked at the fact that God is always guiding us, providing for us, correcting us, and protecting us. He's always doing those four things, and we get great hope because we know that He's the good shepherd. And we looked at the fact that our hope, the anthem of hope that is Jesus, is the fact that He's literally leading our lives. And we can literally know the shepherd. We can know His voice. And we can know which way to go because we know who He is. This week we're going to continue in that series, Anthem of Hope. It was a few weeks back, and I was in the house, and I was kind of just one of those weeks when you feel like the world is caving in on you. And it feels like there's so much pressure going on. And I was in my office at the house, and I was kind of posted up on the couch doing what I do when I feel a lot of pressure, which is shop for cars. It makes zero sense, and I am fully aware, but ask anyone that's close to me, and they will tell you that whenever I'm under pressure, the thing that I like to do, the thing that totally takes my mind off of everything else going on is looking at cars. And I love to shop for them. I don't do that anymore because we shifted gears professionally from being a lawyer to a pastor of a church plant, so we don't buy cars anymore. But used to, I would call car dealerships all over the country and negotiate deals. I would swap cars every 6 to 9 months. It's just what I did. I enjoyed it. It was an outlet for me. And I'm doing it. I'm looking at all these cars, and I'm talking about them and the features that they have. And I read all the car magazines, and I can tell you all the details, how many trim levels they have and what comes in each one. And I'm talking to myself, and no one's in the room. And then I hear Collier say, "What are you doing?" He's 5, and he's looking at me like I'm crazy. A 5-year-old looks at you like you're crazy. All right? And I said, "I'm just looking at cars." He said, "Well, who are you talking to?" And I said, "Well, I guess myself." And fortunately, because Collier is a natural encourager, he looks at me and says, "Yeah, I do that too." But we all have something that we turn to whenever we feel life's pressure. For some of us, it's mowing the grass. I don't have that. I wish I had a gift of doing something that was actually productive when I feel pressure, right? For some of us, it's cleaning. That was always my mom's when I was growing up. My mom would clean the house whenever she felt pressure in her life. I'm waiting for my wife to pick that one up. It's a joke for those of you that aren't laughing, okay? It's not that serious, I promise. But we all do something. We turn to something in our times of pressure because let's be honest, man, the world's full of pressure. Call it what you want. Some people call it stress. I don't call it stress in my life because I feel like if I say I'm stressed, I become more stressed. So I call it pressure. You can call it stress. You can call it anxiety. You can call it perfectionism. You can call it whatever you want, but we all feel all of these things coming down on us. In 2 Corinthians chapter 1, picking up at verse 8, we have Paul writing to the church in Corinth at this point in time. But you got to understand, Paul is part of planning this church in Corinth, and then he separates from it, and some things start to go awry. And he's in Ephesus, and he's in Rome, and he's traveling to all these different places, and he's writing these letters to the church in Corinth, trying to correct them, trying to encourage them, trying to keep them on track. And I love what Paul writes. He says, we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about the troubles we are experiencing in the province of Asia. We were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, so that we despaired of life itself. So much pressure that he despaired life, that they despaired waking up each and every day, that they despaired having to put one foot in front of the other and tackle all of the obstacles that they're facing. It says, indeed, we felt we had received the sentence of death, but this happened that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God, who raises the dead. He has delivered us from such deadly peril, and he will deliver us again. On him we have set our hope that he will continue to deliver us as you help us by your prayers. Then many will give thanks on our behalf for the gracious favor granted us and answer to the prayers of the many. I'm going to jump over real quick to 1 Samuel. I'm going to pick this up in chapter 17 at verse 45. But what we've got here, to give you a little context, is we've got the story of David and Goliath. So Goliath is this Philistine man, and he's huge. He's a giant of the time. And he's coming out day after day after day after day, and he's mocking God's army, and he's pounding his chest, and he's saying, who wants a piece of me? Goliath is the definition of a bully. He's essentially unbeatable in battle, and he knows it. So he's challenging them each and every day. And we have David, this young shepherd boy that's not even in the army at the time. He literally has a flock of sheep that he tends to. And David shows up on the scene, and he sees Goliath pounding his chest and mocking God's army. He's delivering bread and cheese to his brothers, and he's like, no, what are y'all doing, you bunch of sissies? So David said to the Philistine, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. I love it. That's bold, right? He ain't beating around the bush. In fact, he's giving him the details. I'm not just going to win, I'm going to win big. I'm not just going to win temporarily, I'm going to win forever. I'm not going to let you retreat. I'm not going to let you run and hide. I'm going to permanently end this. This very day I will give the carcass of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, I love this, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. I love it because David's in this moment of pressure. This giant of a man is coming out, and he's mocking God's army day after day after day after day after day after day, and he says, no, boys, we're not chumps. This isn't how we operate. We live in bold spirits with bold power because we serve the God of the impossible that defeats giants all around us. I'm going to run to the pressure. I'm not going to run from it. I'm going to press into the pressure. I'm going to keep moving forward. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran over and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it out from the sheath. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. I love how David and Paul talk about pressure. We got two different circumstances here where they're feeling immense pressure. I was sitting there in that office looking on my apps for cars and talking to myself because I felt a lot of pressure. But when we talk to ourselves in the moment of pressure, there's some things that I want us to begin speaking in our own lives. Number one is, I've been here before. I've been here before. In the passage, Paul is writing about how he feels the pressure and that he doesn't want to bear it, but notice what Paul says. He says, I've been here before. He says, we were under great pressure far beyond our ability to endure, so that we despaired of life itself. Indeed, we felt we had received the sentence of death. But this happened that we might not rely on ourselves, but on the one who raises the dead. He has delivered us from such a deadly peril, and he will deliver us again. He has delivered us from such a deadly peril, and he will deliver us again. When you feel pressure in your life, you've got to remind yourself, I've been here before. See, what pressure does is it surrounds us and it blinds us into thinking that this is a unique, impossible circumstance that no one has ever faced, that I've never faced before. It gives us this impossible reflection on our life that says, you can't do it. You can't keep up. You've never faced this kind of pressure. I noticed the fact that Paul writes and he talks about the pressure, but he doesn't give us the details of what that pressure is. I wonder if it's because he's writing about pressure from a global context, and he wants each of us to understand that while our pressure may not be identical today as it was yesterday, it's still just pressure. It doesn't matter the facts or the circumstances bringing pressure against you. It's just pressure. You faced it before and you came out on top. Paul's reflecting back on the goodness of God. He's reflecting back on the provision that's been given to him before. He's reflecting back on the impossible battles that he's won time and time and time again. And this is driving me nuts. Let's try this. I'm going to lose my mind. I'm feeling pressure. Been here before. That's not the first time the mic hadn't worked in this place. I'm going to tell you right now. We paid enough for them, you'd think they'd work. But it said I've been here before. When I moved off to law school, I moved to Tulsa, a town that I had never lived in before. And when you very first get to a town that you've never lived in before, one of the most unfortunate things that you feel is the pressure of being lost. You're trying to get somewhere and you don't know how to actually get there and you get lost. And some of you are like, why is being lost a big deal? Well, being lost is a big deal because you're late. And Jacob Howell isn't late. Or maybe a lot of things, but late isn't one of them. I can't stand being late, so I feel pressure when I'm lost. It drives me bonkers. And as I stayed in Tulsa and 2 months pass and 3 months pass and 4 months pass and 5 months pass, it's not that I quit getting lost. It's that I would get lost in areas in which I'd been lost before. And there's less pressure because I had found my way out the first time or the second time or the third time. I'd be lost driving around and I would see a landmark that I saw that the last time I was lost and I turned here and it corrected things for me. Or I would be driving around lost and I would say, you know what, I got lost in this area before, but it only took me 5 minutes to get back on track and to find my way. There's comfort in saying to yourself, you know, I've been here before. I may be lost. I may be under pressure. The world may be coming against me, but I've been here before and I know what happens. I know what happens and I know that at the end of the story that things work out in my favor. Just before the passage that we read in 1 Samuel, what we see David say to the army, his own army, we sing the king come up and say, listen, buddy, you can't go win this fight. You're not even in the army. You're a shepherd boy. You don't know what you're doing. And what David reminds him of is he says, you know what? As a shepherd, I've had to face lions and I've had to face bears. I've had to face those battles before, and let me tell you what happened. God allowed me to win. I didn't walk around lost forever. You see, I'd been there before. I've walked this path, and I know what happens at the end of it. When you say to yourself, I've been here before, what you're saying to the pressure is, I'm going to win. I may not win today, and I may not win tomorrow, but I'm going to keep breathing into my own life. I'm going to keep speaking into my own life that I've been here before. And each and every time I win. Number 2, I want you to say this to yourself. God does not need me. He wants me. God doesn't need me. He wants me. Whenever I get home from the grocery store, I'll have loads of bags of groceries, and I'm just like you guys. I can't stand making 2 trips. Pile them up, right? Just no circulation in the left arm, but that's all right. Just keep dragging them. But now I've got kids. Collier will come out and he'll help me. Ava's started helping me a little bit. And I like to almost make them do it because I'm trying to instill some work ethic in them. It's paying off too. Those of y'all that were there yesterday, I'm telling you, 5-year-old Collier, I tell a lot of bad stories about that kid, but I got to brag on him. That dude outworked everybody else there at 5. He was a motor. I mean, laser focused, one piece of wood at a time. But you're trying to instill this in your kids. And what really happens is they just get in your way, right? You're carrying these bags and then they've got one and they drop it and the items in the bag spill out and something breaks and you've got a mess to clean up and you've got something to do. See, I don't need my kids to carry in the bags of groceries. I'm more than capable of doing that on my own. But I want something for my kids. I want them to have a great work ethic that leads to them getting a great job. I want them to have a work ethic that perseveres through the times of pressure and the times of challenges. And you're like, I don't get why it's good news that God doesn't need me. It's good news because there's great freedom in knowing that your screw up isn't permanent, that your mess up isn't forever, that you get to go at it and you get to tackle it and you get to say, you know what, with reckless abandon, I'm going to chase the mission that he's given me. And if I mess it up, he didn't actually need me. He'll still fix it. Now I want to caution us for just a minute. God's purpose will always go forward, with or without you. And because he doesn't need you, what that means is that there's a blessing at the end of every purpose he gives you. But you only receive the blessing in your obedience. You only receive the blessing if you're willing to take the step, if you're willing to walk in faith, if you're willing to pursue it. You say, yeah, but he doesn't need me. No, he doesn't need you. He'll use someone else to accomplish that purpose. And he'll give them the blessing that had your name on it. God, that's just not that encouraging. It's extremely encouraging to me. I remember being about 5 and it was time to learn how to ride a bike. And my dad's encouraging me because I used to be a wuss. I was terrified. I was way too practical, right? Like I know what happens at the end of this. I crash the bike and I get hurt. Why do I want to get on that thing? They have these things called cars now, Dad. You're 5. And I kind of talked like that at 5. And I remember asking him, look him straight in the eye, can you ride a bike? He says, yeah. Why? I said, show me. So he does. He hops on the bike and he rides it and he shows me. And at 5, what that said to me is, if he can ride a bike, then he can help me learn how to ride a bike. If he can ride a bike, then he's going to know when I'm going to crash, and he's going to be running beside me, and he's actually going to catch me because he's going to see it, because he's done it before, because he'll do it again, because he knows what he's doing and how to do it. My dad didn't need me to ride a bike. I don't need my kids to carry the bags. My dad wanted me to learn how to ride a bike because he knew the pleasure that I would have in it. And he was willing to say, I know how to do this. I can show you. I can teach you. I can use you. I don't need my kids to carry the bags. They get in the way, but I want them to learn something. I want them to have something. I want to prepare them for what's coming next. I want to get them ready for something bigger and something greater. So listen, when God is operating in the midst of your pressure, what he's doing is he's giving your pressure a purpose. Every time you're in the middle of pressure, I promise you, God will turn your pressure into a purpose if you will allow him. And in the midst of that purpose, you say, I'm not capable. No, you're not. I'm not smart enough. You're not. I'm not strong enough. Nope, not even close. I'm not wise enough. Nope, I'm not experienced enough. You're not. You think I'm capable of actually pastoring this church? Not a chance. But he doesn't need me. He just wants me. I get to ride the bike. I get to carry the bags. I get to share the gospel. I get to love on other people. I get to share vision. I get to share with my neighbor. I get to love. Every single opportunity God gives you in your life has nothing to do with his need for you and everything to do with his want for you. So take the pressure and throw it out the window. The world isn't going to fall apart because of something you mess up. I was a really young lawyer. Didn't even have a full license. I just had a temporary one. And I was terrified. And an old lawyer said to me, the good news about the law is this. There's very few things that you can screw up that we can't undo. There's great freedom in knowing that he doesn't actually need us, but that he wants us. Number 3 is that the pressure makes me better. You got to say that to yourself. You got to remind yourself that the pressure makes me better. The pressure makes me better. The pressure is going to be used for a purpose. The pressure in my life is going to be used to propel me forward. I've got hope in Jesus because I know that the pressure is going to be converted into something greater, into something more. The very first jury trial that I ever second chaired, I'm walking into the courtroom. It's first-degree murder. That's not where you're supposed to start. I'm just going to tell you right now, you're supposed to start with a traffic ticket. A harassing, something small, something that you can't mess up. I started in this pressure cooker. And it felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders. But the pressure made me better. I got past day 1 and I'm like, hey, I'm doing okay. And day 2, hey, I'm still sticking in this thing. Day 3, we got a conviction. Clip my wings, God, I'm ready to run. The pressure always makes us better. Everything in your life that God allows to pressure you, what he's doing is he's pushing you. He's getting you ready for something greater. Our natural reaction is that we want to depressurize our lives. We want to back away from it. We don't want to run to the battle line as David did. We want to back up from the battle line. We don't want to run to the fight. We want to back up from it. We don't want to live in the pressure and the frustration and the angst of the unknown. We want to back up and we want to live in safety. But when we live in safety, what we're missing out on is all of the blessings that God has for us at the end of his purpose for our lives. I'm telling you, if your life has no pressure in it, then show me where your purpose is. I'm not saying that you have to live at the end of the rope where you constantly feel like you're going to pull all your hair out. That's not what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is, what's your challenge to live tomorrow vibrant and full of life? What's the opportunity that you're going to give yourself to accomplish something bigger than you? I said it when we were praying earlier. I mean it with all that I have. I want this to be a house built on the miraculous. If all anyone ever looks at and says, man, that's a bunch of people doing a bunch of people stuff, then what'd we do? We didn't accomplish anything. We didn't operate in the function that God's called us to operate in. And listen, when you're trying to operate in a level that's beyond your ability, there's some pressure that comes with it, but it's in that moment that your faith is put into action, that it's actually engaged. I think about David walking up, seeing all that's going on, and he speaks boldly. And I just picture this little guy. I don't know how big David was, but I picture him not being big. I picture him being a little guy. And I think, where'd the boldness come from? And sometimes when we read that story and we read the details of it, it's almost like we think, well, David wasn't scared. Well, David wasn't worried. Well, David didn't have any doubt. Bull. I can promise you, David had some fear. And he had some reservation. What if I miss? He picked up 5, right? He didn't pick up 1. He didn't pick up 1 stone. What if the first one doesn't get him? What if I don't hit him hard enough? What if I don't hit him flush? Better have some backup. Better have a backup plan. Better have an escape route. Better know what's going on. It's not about setting aside every fear or every anxiety that you will ever have in your life. It's about saying that my faith is bigger than my pressure. My faith is greater than the thing that's coming up against me. My faith is here. I'm going to allow God to use it. See, the world can teach you how to cope with your pressure. Only God can convert your pressure. The world can teach you how to deal with it, how to put it on a shelf, how to operate through it, how to work around it, how to back up from it. But only God can convert it into a great purpose where you will achieve great things. Number 4 is we've got to say to ourselves, I'm not really alone. As Paul's writing them, he says, then many will give thanks on our behalf for the gracious favor granted us in answer to the prayers of many. Not of his own, but of the prayers of many. The enemy wants to put pressure on us to make it seem like we're isolated and alone and in a fight by ourselves and in a struggle by ourselves. He wants to tell you that the sickness that you're facing is being used to put you in a corner that you will never come out of. He wants to ruin the relationships that you have in your life so that you look around and say, there's nothing for me to do. There's nowhere for me to go. I have no reason to move on. I don't have the love in my life that I need. I don't have the people in my life that I need. He wants to leave you broken financially so that he can say, see, I told you. I told you that you couldn't make it. I told you that you couldn't live a generous life. I told you that you couldn't live in abundance. The greatest myth that the enemy will ever tell you is that you're alone. And pressure is one of the greatest things in our life that make us feel isolated and by ourselves. Whatever that pressure may be. Pressure makes you want to back up in your office, pull out your Cars.com app and talk to yourself. It's what pressure does. But you're not alone. You're not by yourself. The prayers of many, and just like we talked about last week, there's great hope in the fact that you can know the shepherd, that you can hear his voice, that he's always available, that he's always guiding, providing, correcting, and protecting everything in your life. Last point. I'm going to wrap it up. This is the great hope. God will turn whatever the pressure is in your life back to you to be used as protection. We read the story as David faces Goliath, and he runs up and he defeats him and he cuts his head off, and he's walking in victory at this point in his life. He's anointed to be the next king at this point. He's just won a great battle. We then see him move into King Saul's court, and he begins to play the harp for him, and he's learning how to be a great king, and he's studying under the king that's before him, and he's getting ready in his life. Then his world falls apart. David's life completely falls apart. King Saul turns on him, wants to kill him, wants to pursue him, wants to fight him, wants to tackle him, wants to come after him. And David goes on the run. And it's in the midst of the run that we see this beautiful passage in 1 Samuel 21, chapter 8. David's on the run for his life. He's had to flee in the darkness of night to get away from what it is that Saul's going to do to him. It says, David asked Amalek, "Don't you have a spear or a sword here? I haven't brought my sword or any other weapon because the king's mission was urgent." The priest replied, "The sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah, is here. It is wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you want it, take it. There is no sword here but that one." David said, "There is none like it. Give it to me." Remember, just before, David says to Goliath, "You have come against me with the sword. You've put pressure on all of my people. You've put pressure on me with a sword. You came at me with a sword." David defeats him. He takes it. He cuts his head off with the sword, and he doesn't see it again. It's not until David's on the run in complete pressure, under complete exile, trying to literally save his life so that he can fulfill the purpose that God's given him, which is to be the next king, that he walks up and he says, "Hey, I don't even have a sword with me. I have nothing to protect myself. How am I going to make it these next few moments without any defense?" And God doesn't just give him any sword. He gives him the very sword that came against him. He gives him the very sword in his life that brought great pressure against himself. You said, "Great. How do I apply this?" I had something happen in my life this week that reminded me of something that really changed my life. A few years back, I had a friend. He was giving for the first time in his faith. And he ran up on a tough moment. He said, "Man, I don't know what to do. I don't know how I make it. I don't know. I've got financial pressure running through my ears. I don't know how I'm going to continue to give and be faithful to the house of God. It seems like I'm at the end of my rope and I shouldn't continue that path." And I went to praying for him. And I was praying, as many of us would, "God, would you show your faithfulness to him? God, would you give him what it is that he needs? God, would you give him the very thing that's bringing the pressure against him?" Holy Spirit spoke to me in that moment and said, "You're not praying right. You're praying from the wrong position. Begin praying that he'll have the faithfulness to give. Because my promises are always yes and amen, and my promises are always true." How many times in our life do we face the pressure and we pray, "God, take the pressure away. God, I'm not ready for a first-degree murder trial as number one. Give me something easier." And the real prayer should be, "God, get me ready for the first-degree murder trial. Don't take the pressure away. But God, get me ready to convert the pressure. Get me ready to use the pressure, because I know what happens. I may be on the run. I may be feeling the greatest stress of my life. The world may be coming against me. The king wants me killed, and armies are pursuing me, and I'm on my own. But you're going to take that sword that was Goliath's, and you're going to give it to me. You see, we've got to pray from the right position. We're good at saying that we need to pray, but we don't always pray from are you praying from a position of faith? Because a position of faith says that it will already happen if we'll take our step. But what we tend to do is we pray asking God to operate in our lives, then we'll step. God, if you'll prove your faithfulness to me, then I'll be faithful to you. And he's saying, no. Why don't you pray that you get some faith? Why don't you pray that your faith becomes strengthened? Why don't you pray and take a step and watch me meet it? Why don't you pray and take a step and watch me correct it? Why don't you pray that I'm going to be healed and watch me heal you? Why don't you pray God, I'm going to give to you whether I have it or not, and watch me pour it back on you? Why don't you pray, God, this relationship, show me how to restore it. God, get me ready to restore it and watch me restore it. We've got to shift the position that we pray, and then the pressure shifts and he returns back to us for our benefit. That which brought pressure against us. If we could bow our heads and close our eyes. If there's just anybody in this room that doesn't yet know Jesus, you don't have any of the hope that comes with Jesus because you don't have a real relationship with him. Man, I just want to give you an opportunity to just say a quick prayer with us. We won't embarrass you. We won't call you out. We just want you to take one small step in your faith. If you'd say, I don't know Jesus, but I want to, just slip your hand up. If there's anybody in this house that would say, you know what? Man, the pressure of life's getting the best of me. The pressure of life's coming against me. I feel it. Just slip your hand up. We just want to pray with you. That you would see the pressure differently. That you would understand it differently. That you would reposition yourself in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, man, we ask that you would not take away every pressure in this room, but that you would use every pressure that's in this room for a purpose. That you would change the way that we see the pressure, that you would change the way that we position ourselves against the pressure, that we would understand that the hope that is you is that even in the midst of our seeming defeat, you're working, you're moving, you're operating, you're having your way. God, we ask that we would pray in a way that forces us to engage our faith rather than asking you to fix it for us. God, that we would begin to understand that we've got to look at the giants in our life and pronounce boldly that we're going to come against them in the name of the Lord. That the swords and the javelins and the spears have no standing against you, that the pressures that we're going to face each and every day cannot and will not defeat us, but we will keep moving forward in your promises and your truth. God, we give you praise and all of the honor. It's in your great name we pray. Amen.
It's a great word today, amen. Guys, we hope you've been encouraged. We want to take just a few minutes right here at the end just to focus in on circles just for a little bit. I want to go ahead and dismiss all of our circle leaders. They're going to go to the foyer. They're going to be waiting on us when we get out there. But guys, I can't emphasize enough how important that this ministry is for our church. Guys, it's just an opportunity for you to get connected, for you to get to know one another better, and for you to get discipled in some of these groups. And we've got everything from youth to, what's the word? What's a good word? Let me think. let's say grandparents. Nobody can be offended by grandparents. We love the grandkids. So we've got everything from youth age to grandparents. And so, guys, we want to encourage you to get involved in one of these groups. As we leave today, you're going to notice that we've got some tables set up, and we've got our leaders that are going to be out in front of the tables. They've got some information cards and also some sign-up sheets. Now, here's the thing that we did with our circles before. You don't have to sign up for just one. You can go to one and realize, this one's not working out for me, and try out another one, okay? That's totally okay. Our leaders aren't going to be offended by that in any way, but we want you to find what fits you best. And so we encourage you to get involved with a couple of these, try them out. It's something that's going to be great for each and every one of you. I'll tell you the circles that we've got to offer for this semester. We've added 2 circles that are new for this semester. First of all, we've got the Marion and Howell circle, and several of you have been a part of this circle in the past, and these guys are going to be meeting on different nights. They're going to be meeting about every 2 or 3 weeks, and so we want to encourage you. This is going to be led by Steve and Tracy Marion and also Lee and Jatan Howell, and so we want to encourage you guys to check that one out and just find out if that's one that fits for you. Another one is the Wilkinson and Moomie circle. This is a new one that is just for our ladies, and so this is one that we're excited about, and so we want you ladies to stop by, talk to them. You can find out a little bit more information about that. They're going to be actually doing a study in this one that's going to be great for you ladies, and so I think it'd be a good one for you to be a part of. Another one that we've got that is new for this year is the Gramlich circle. This is led by Luke and Emily Gramlich. The topics are going to be vary. The dates are going to vary on this one. The first meeting for this one is this Thursday, okay? And so stop by, talk to them. Also, the Holmes circle. This is Kevin and Shannon Holmes. This one is going to be meeting on Wednesday nights, every other Wednesday night, and they're going to be actually doing a study on soul detox by Craig Groeschel. This is a great study. And so, guys, several different circles, and then we've got one more. That's the youth circle, okay? And if you're here and you are a youth, guys, Bridget's going to be out there. I'll be out there. If you're between 6th and 12th grade, we want to talk to you. If you haven't already signed up to be a part of this circle, we want to talk to you about that one also. So, guys, you can go ahead and stand with us. We're going to dismiss. Again, please stop by, talk to these leaders, find out what it's all about, and get signed up for some of these circles. We love you guys. We'll see you next week. You're dismissed.